there's a portion of the Tucker Carlson Caldwell interview that people have been using snippets of. And it's such a silly me. I thought that it would be a major part of the interview itself. I thought it would either be scattered throughout and that the whole interview was about this stuff. And it was, they managed to fill an hour and a half talking about who got fired and why, who's, what they're accused of, what they know. All right. Okay. Let me show you something. This is, if you can watch this is Woody himself, ladies and gentlemen.
I like wood.
It's true. You should see the rest of the studio.
Deeper and longer.
So, and he's looking doughier than usual. I think he's given up on the brochismo, incel, ball tanning lifestyle that he was doing for a little while, and has just gone back to the carbs. And his goal now is to just make sure that chair doesn't float off into the sky. So, but this is Pete Hegseth's top advisor framed for Pentagon leaks, in quotes. It was really about Iran. So, lead buried. Thanks, Tucker. You know what? I appreciate it. I hate the sound of your fucking voice, and thank God we don't have to listen to you anymore because you just tell it in there. But look how far into this fucking thing, and there's chapters on this shit. There's, like, if you go up to here, this is what would happen if the U.S. went to war with Iran. The real reason the U.S. invaded Iraq. The military power of Iran. The global coalition Iran has formed because of the U.S. Is this evil or stupidity? That's the idea that we're going to invade Iran. And this is the storyline that he's selling is that Caldwell was fired because he's too dovish on Iran, and that's in line with Trump and with how Hegseth used to be, but now they're not, so he's got to be punted. So, it makes no fucking sense. But they build up this whole case that there are a bunch of people across the aisle. Apparently, Democrats want to attack Iran as much as everybody else. It's just everybody wants to do it. And poor little Dan Caldwell and these 4 other dickheads were trying to talk Pete Hegseth out of being, zapped with a Jewish space laser and convinced that we have to attack Iran so that he would tell Trump, and they wouldn't do it, or would force him to do it or some shit. It's hard to work out. But they yammer on about this shit for quite some time before they get to the actual story of the firings. And here we go.
You feel it, and I'm not involved at all. I'm just watching, but it seems like the fastest way to derail the whole project, the Trump administration and the United States of America, is a war with Iran. And that's why I've just been watching it as carefully as I can, because
also, what do you mean watching it as carefully as you can? Can I just, I know that I'm nitpicking at this point, but can I just say that, Tucker Carlson has a horrible habit of just making up self-important phrases and activities for himself. I've been paying as much attention to it carefully as I can, because if I'm not careful, I'll stumble into the room and start throwing things because I'm so outraged or whatever. What do you mean careful as you can? You're reading it on Twitter, fuckwad. It's so dumb.
Again, if you hated Donald Trump and you hated what the administration is doing on immigration, trade, anti-wokeness, whatever, and you wanted to stop it, the first thing you would do is
bring up the Epstein files and make sure that those come out, and do everything you can to get the Epstein files out, because it would turn his base on him, and they'd finally realize that that Epstein had no better friend in his entire life than Donald Trump, and their friendship was the closest friendship that Trump had since Roy Cohn, another man who fucked boys, who fucked children specifically, and so you could derail a lot of that shit that way. I would think maybe that's why Pam Bondi isn't, maybe that's why Kash Patel isn't helping or facilitate that, because they both know, but that probably wouldn't work. You're probably right. Probably wouldn't work. Yeah.
Pressure to have the U.S. military engage in a war with Iran. I mean, that's my perspective on it anyway.
Okay. First of all, you're a dipshit. the idea that the DOD is wagging the dog themselves just so they can derail Trump's mission at the border or something is fucking bizarre. It's like, you could argue trashing the world economy, said that in there, Robert, yeah. So you could argue that there might be like super billionaires who are like, this motherfucker's gonna destroy the economy of the world if we don't stop him, and that's why you would do it. But it wouldn't be coming from inside the fucking Pentagon.
That, and also continuing to do what we've been doing previously in Russia, Ukraine.
For sure.
Oh yeah, totally. Russia, Ukraine. Yeah, just continuing that will stop Trump from doing all the things he desperately wants to do with Tren de Aragua.
But I don't know why. Well, I'm going to ask you all about this, but it feels like Witkoff is helping a lot there. God bless.
By the way, earlier in the interview, Caldwell said Witkoff was doing a great job and stuff. So this is a callback to that, as if he had that thought himself. Trump does this a lot of times. So a reporter will say something to him, and he'll go, I just heard that this. And you're like, yeah, motherfucker, you heard it from me.
I mean, I've already said he's a godsend.
God bless.
Right, earlier in the interview.
Witkoff, I couldn't agree more. As a man and as an instrument of peace. And a figure now out of history. Okay.
Yes, Steve Witkoff, a figure now out of history. The man who helped establish a ceasefire in Israel and Gaza that the Biden administration had already made happen, and then it fell apart and nobody's bothered to even try to jumpstart it on their part ever again. Also, that's failed miserably when it comes to Russia and Ukraine, even when they're offering horrible, horrible concessions to Russia.
You did make, just from an outsider's perspective, one maybe career mistake by giving on-the-record interviews before you went in, describing your foreign policy views, which I think are fully within the mainstream of the world and the U.S., but out of the mainstream among, warmongers.
Yeah, because that's basically how you divide the world up. You know what I mean? It's like the new version of the 1%. There's like 1% warmongers, and 99% are like, look, I don't care if Russia is raping, murdering people in Bucha. The noise bothers my ears.
Washington. So, like, there were people knew that you weren't fully on board with the regime change program. Is that fair to say?
What regime change program? This is, by the way, this is all based on the mythical idea of Trump wanting to and not wanting to attack Iran at the same time.
I was very open about it. I was very on the record about it. And most of the time when I was saying that we shouldn't do this, it was actually in support of, the president's stated preferences. Like, the president clearly doesn't want this.
Well, he doesn't actually clearly want anything. He vacillates all over the fucking place, and he has flip-flopped repeatedly. He threatened Iran directly in a letter, gave them a deadline, and that deadline is rapidly approaching. And?
First term, there were people in his administration that wanted it. He clearly didn't want it.
Why would you say that? What makes you think he clearly didn't want it? Since he scuttled the Iran deal that we had, and he was ratcheting up pressure and has continued to ratchet up pressure, and in his engagement with Israel has expanded the idea that they will do the attack and we will have their back in a matter of weeks.
It was supporting people who didn't want the war. And so I was essentially...
But Donald Trump has said, and now his actions make perfectly clear, he would strongly prefer a diplomatic solution.
His actions include a red line that had a date on it. That's not an action that clearly says you prefer diplomatic. And by the way, you can prioritize a diplomatic solution and still go to war by setting the deadline too close or the standard too high, dipshit.
Correct. I don't want to speak for the president, but it's fairly obvious that that's what he wants.
It's actually pretty easy, actually. You can speak for Trump all you want. Say anything on either side of an issue, and eventually you'll be in agreement with him or in disagreement.
He said it. I mean,
yeah.
He said it again, and he ran on it. So it's not a crazy...
Yeah, he also ran on getting us out of Afghanistan and never did.
Position. And now things are getting so bonkers in this country that
Yeah, it's so bonkers. Yeah, it is so bonkers. Like somebody is obviously controlling him and making him bomb the Houthis and send troops to fucking Panama and talk about invading the Panama Canal, even though we already have we're at peace with them. We never have been at war with them.
that makes you a bigot or something, a Nazi. It's like,
No. You make you those things. Just occasionally you say things that make it obvious to everyone around you. You do realize that, like, saying bigoted things aren't what make you a bigot. You're a bigot, and then you say those things. People can say those things if they were repeating them or from someone else or quoting someone. The actual words don't make you the bigot. It's the activity inside your brain and soul that makes you come to the conclusions whether you say them or not. There could be, for all practical purposes, a deaf, mute bigot. And nobody knows, but they are.
I'm just going to ignore all that. And I just want to get back to your experience. So I'm just...
Yeah, I would. If I was Tucker, I wouldn't dig too deep. I wouldn't scratch the surface of that too much.
From the outside, and I'm thinking, having spent my life in D.C., I was like, Dan Caldwell's got a target on his back that I don't know if he knows that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Dealing with the Pentagon and Intel and yeah, he could get killed. But seriously, my biggest concern is that Tucker Carlson doesn't have command of his emotions, and that is given to sort of dinner theater jokerish fits of laughter about the things, but yeah.
And then I read all of a sudden that you're a traitor. You're like marched out of the Pentagon for leaking, right?
Yeah, just dribbling after using the urinal and just not giving it a double tap just to make sure.
And the whispering campaign, the character assassination campaign begins, and here's its outline. I don't know.
Again, not a whisper campaign. Hegseth said it in front of his kids at the Easter egg roll.
You may not even be aware of this.
You may not even be aware of this, but they were saying it in the Easter thing in front of the Easter Bunny. It's just kind of, which is, a terrible thing. And I was thinking about this the other day that, even the Easter Bunny knows. Holy shit. Like this is what happens when you just get lonelier and lonelier and just in more of like an antisocial pocket. If you're just like a dude born with a silver spoon in your ass and everybody around you is slowly backing away.
Dan Caldwell leaked classified information to liberal media outlets, to the media, to NBC News, for example. So I just want to be totally direct with you. Did you leak classified information against the wishes of your superiors to media outlets?
Okay. I stopped this before when we saw the clip of this, but I want to make this abundantly clear. Listen to the languaging there. Did you leak it to liberal media outlets against the wishes of your superior officers, as if to guarantee him a box out that there might be a situation where Trump or Pete Hegseth wanted this to get out via some channel to the media because they liked how it made them look, or because they wanted to use it as to test the waters from a PR standpoint to how things would actually be received by the public at large, those kind of things. That they will leak messages out like that intentionally to get a gauge of public reaction. This question allows him to avoid that entirely. Against the wishes of your superior presumes that you do leak those things with their blessing on occasion.
Absolutely not.
Did you photograph classified material and then text pictures of that material to an NBC News reporter?
Absolutely not. And
okay, and then he says,
I have not spoken to an NBC reporter while at the Pentagon.
Okay, couple of things right there. I mean, just if you were under oath and you were cross-examining, that you'd first go like, well, okay, you didn't text it and you didn't take pictures of classified information and text it. Did you meet with him in person and show it to him? Because while you say you never spoke to one while you were at the Pentagon could mean while you're during your time at the Pentagon, but it could also mean while you're in the building. At the Pentagon can read both ways. It depends on what your definition of is. I did not have sexual relations with that NBC reporter's phone, Miss Lewinsky, right?
Do you know what you've been accused of?
No, I don't. Sitting here right now, myself and Darren Selnick and Colin Carroll, the other two individuals that were escorted out of the Pentagon, initially placed on leave and then fired on Friday, we have not been told as of this recording, one, is there what we were being investigated for? Two.
Also not true. They were being, that's a flat out lie. They know that they were under investigation for, removed, and then fired in each of those steps because of the mishandling of classified information. They all have lawyers. They all are aware of this. They were all told that that was why after the fact. They have heard it in the press as well. Again, what classified stuff specifically that they are accused of sending out doesn't matter. They are accused of mishandling classified information. That's why they were put on leave, and then that's why they were fired. So what he's saying is a lie. He can say it's not true. He can say, I don't know specifically what piece of information I'm accused of getting, of disseminating. But he knows, of course he fucking knows. Of course he knows.
Is there still an investigation?
Yes, there is. There's an ongoing investigation. You know how I know? Because fucking Pete Hegseth said it in front of his kids at the Easter egg roll. He said it again in front of Kilmeade. And the idea that these dickheads haven't seen the tape of him speaking about this is, it beggars belief.
Was there even a real investigation? Because there's a lot of evidence that there is not a real investigation. But again, sitting here right now, there are a lot of unknowns about this. As a former Secretary of Defense would say, there's a lot of unknown unknowns. There are some things that are pretty clear, but we have no idea what specifically we're being investigated
for.
So
we can know some things just by the details. So here are a couple. Have you been
right?
No.
He says, have you been polygraphed? And he says, no.
I've never been hooked up to a polygraph machine since I've been in the Department of Defense.
Okay.
Which really speaks to the lack of security protocols that are going on in the Trump administration.
Have you given up your private communications devices, your private phone, your phone?
No.
To anybody?
No.
Okay. So that raises the obvious question. I'm trying not to use the F word here because the lying is just driving me insane.
I don't think the lying would have to do that. I think it's you could walk from here.
You're being accused of leaking classified information, but the people accusing you would have no way of knowing whether you did that or not because they haven't polygraphed you or taken your devices.
Okay. They don't need your devices if you sent it through internal communications without your private device. Secondly, they can assume it went out because they know that you were the only source, whether they've checked your phone or not. If only 3 people got a look at this document and you're one of them and the other 2 are me and that guy, and we both know we didn't do it, you're up. So of course you can tell. And a polygraph is not admissible in court because you can beat a polygraph. You want to know how? You want to know how to beat a polygraph? Because kids, do you want to know a little secret about little Hal? In 8th grade science class, we had to do a report, a science report, and it was one of the few A's that I got in middle school because I was not the greatest student, and not because I didn't understand the materials, but because I was a jerk off. I was a fuck around in class most of the time. I did a report on polygraphs and built one. Yet I built a fucking polygraph using stuff that I got from my mom's doctor's office. They had an old EKG machine, and I was like, it would take your pulse. They had a pulse measuring cuff, and I used that, and then I hooked it up to this like little needle that my dad had from his shop or whatever, and so it would go you could just see it. It wasn't that big a deal, but for 8th grade science purposes, it worked. And so I did a report on polygraphs, and one of the things that I it was like, is it true? Like, is it a lie detector? Is there such thing as a lie detector? Like, no, a polygraph is not a lie detector because you can lie, you can get away with it. And one of the ways you can do it, quite frankly, is you put a rock in your shoe. Put a rock in your shoe. And anytime they ask you a true question, or attack is really the way to do it. But like if you don't think you can get away with, hey, you had a tack in your shoe this whole time, but a rock, you can probably go, I didn't know that was in there, right? You put a rock in your shoe, and every time they ask you a true question, you like push your toe into the rock, and that little bit of pain will change the readings on the device. And therefore it will give you an inconclusive. It will, and then if you're, by comparison, if they ask you your name and your age and you tell them the truth and you hurt yourself with the little rock just barely, it will make the needle go up a bunch. And then when they ask you a question that you're uncomfortable with and you take your toe isn't on the rock, it won't go up as high. So even though it's higher than your normal baseline, it looks like that's more true than your name and your age. Yeah, the tack is, Wes, is a way to do it. But the problem with the tack is if they look in your shoes and they find the tack, you're in trouble. But if you just had a rock in there, you have to find a really pointy rock. And you put it in the center of your shoe. And you either put it near your toe or in the flat of your toe, or flat of your foot in the arch, because it's very sensitive. Okay? So that's how you do it. But the point of my whole report was there is use a Lego, that'll do it, or jacks are great. The point of my whole report was there's no such thing as a lie detector. A polygraph is not a lie detector. It works, but sometimes you have to do it multiple times to get a baseline, and it's easy to beat. That's why it's not admissible in court. Because even when you, if you fail a lie detector test, you could still be innocent. You could just be horrified. If you ask someone if they killed, they're on trial for killing their kid, and you ask the person who is capable of killing a child, did you kill this child? The needle won't go up because they're a fucking psychopath. But if you ask the parents, did you kill your child? Oh my fucking God. Like, how does your heart not leap in that situation? See what I mean? So anyways, there are ways that's why they're not admissible. Okay. Just saying. Nobody's guilty. No, people are guilty. I'm just saying that it judges your reaction, not your honesty. And you can definitely tell they are functional. They do work, but they're not definitive, and they can be beaten. Okay. Which is why you don't use it in court, why it's not admissible in court. It just helps you. What it really does is it helps police know if they're on the right track. That's the best it can do. Yeah, a functional sociopath has no problem with a lie detector. They pass them all the fucking time. They're like proud of beating them, right? So yeah. Anyways, voila. Let's go back to this dipshittery. So again, a polygraph, they're great for security in some cases. And in general, they use them at the FBI and other places. They do that, right? Yeah, you are the father, right? But the fact that he hasn't been through one yet is very odd. Because they're good for, in general, to kind of compare against a multitude of factors, right? They're one tool in the toolbox. You can't rely on them solely. But if you're doing a background check on somebody and you want to see if they're honest or whatever, and especially the ones they do it like CIA or where they check your fucking iris because you're like involuntary contraction of your iris and that kind of stuff, or involuntary dilation of the iris, which is where the Voight concept comes from. You can tell if somebody's panicked or worried by their eye opening and shutting a little bit. It's very small. But anyways, the point being, yeah, you can get a baseline. You can generally tell this, but it's very odd that this asshole has been working there and hasn't had one yet, even before he was accused of something, just as a general order.
Private devices, correct?
I mean, there are...
You can't even make the allegation because there's no conceivable way you can prove that.
There's...
Yes, there is. There's a lot of conceivable ways. Like, We have a document that was here, and one of 3 people had access to it, and we've checked the other 2 people, and they don't have it, and it's gone. And you are the only person who has access to that physical document. What are you talking about? There's hundreds of ways. I mean, how does this asshole think they busted people before the existence of cell phones? Good Lord. It's so stupid.
Many different things that would prevent me from doing the things that you've laid out. And again, I don't even know if that's what I'm really being investigated for. Again, if there's a real investigation, but
okay, that turn of phrase is really telling. I don't even know if there's a real investigation. I mean, this is the fucking Pentagon. And it's being run by Joe Casper, this investigation, or was. And according to the Secretary of Defense, is ongoing. And the guy who's the subject of it apparently doesn't even have a fucking lawyer in this situation except to sue for wrongful termination. So far, that seems to be the thing, but I don't know if it's him or if it's the other 2 guys. We'll look it up in a second. But what the hell? I don't even know if there's a real investigation. That in and of itself says chaos.
The point is so what I have told some people who have asked me about what's going on is I would repeat something that I heard in the Marine Corps in our work up to Iraq. I believe it was in something called a Combat Hunter course.
In the Combat Hunter course. Sounds fantastic. Sounds like a scene I had to take when dealing with my adopted son on Queer as Folk. Yeah.
It isn't what it sounds like. It's actually about observing things better.
Oh, so you want to observe things better. Yes, observing, sorry, I mispronounced it. Observing things better. I'm not familiar with how you observe things.
And I remember an instructor very clearly saying, when you're in this environment, believe nothing of what you hear and only half of what you say. And I think this
Hang on. What?
in this environment, believe nothing of what you hear and only half of what you say.
Does that make any does that make any fucking sense? Yeah, it would be C, wouldn't it? Yes. It would be what you see, not what you say. Correct? What? Hold on. Chat room, does anybody see? It's C, right? Believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. But he remembers it very clearly. Who the fuck are we? How can we even question? I'm so glad this guy worked at the Pentagon. It's so weird.
I think this needs to apply to this situation.
Oh, sure. How would you apply that? How would you apply only believing half of what you say yourself? Actually, you know what? It may be a Freudian slip. I think that's exactly what happened. This asshole just told us exactly what half of what he's saying is bullshit. Half of it is he's being honest or being truthful or semi-truthful or giving unnecessary or worthless details. And then the half of what he's saying is a lie. Good Lord.
Yeah, the problem with it is it's just a very serious allegation.
And that's a very silly quote, which never happened.
That you betrayed your boss and friend, Pete Hegseth, who you've worked with for like over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
Who you
Right. Yeah, but Pete Hegseth just turned on him. So that whole friend Pete Hegseth thing doesn't really apply. This is a raw nerve, clearly.
The very beginning. I think that's all. I don't want to speak for you, but you're being accused of betraying Hegseth, who's under.
He's awful fucking quiet right now. He's not doing. You know how I have trouble talking to AI sometimes because I do a lot of and acknowledgement because I want the person that I'm speaking with to know that I hear them when they're speaking. Like that. I do that all the time. This guy does that too, and he just stopped. Look at this real quick. This whole like.
And I think in this environment, believe nothing of what you hear and only half of what you say. And I think this needs to apply to this situation.
Yeah, the problem with it is it's just a very serious allegation that you betrayed your boss and friend, Pete Hegseth, who you've worked with for like over a decade, who you supported from the very beginning. I think that's all. I don't want to speak for you, but you're being accused of betraying Hegseth, who's under attack from people who want a war with Iran. Let's just be totally blunt about it.
Yeah, that's right. So the reason Dan Caldwell got the boot is because Dan Caldwell doesn't want us to go to war with Iran, and somebody might talk Hegseth out of it, and it might be Dan Caldwell. So he had to be booted on a trumped-up charge of being a traitor because he might talk him out of a decision that isn't even his and that Trump is apparently already for. What the fuck? God damn, this is just like, and this whole like, I mean, Tucker's been selling this cabal bullshit for a long time. World Economic Forum, the fucking Pentaveret nonsense for a long time. That there's a big worldwide organization running everything behind the scenes. It's like, again, his job right now is dweeb Alex Jones.
And so you're being accused of betraying him, betraying the president, and committing a crime. That's a crime. So this is not just like, hey, Dan Caldwell's got bad taste in neckties. This is like Dan Caldwell's a criminal.
Wow, fuck you, dude. I mean, he does have bad taste in neckties. That necktie he's wearing is atrocious. I mean, that is seriously, like the Rotary called. They want their lost and found tie that they've kept there for years in case anybody shows up without one, so they have something to wear tie back.
Yeah, it's just, there's sometimes I think it just hasn't fully set in with me. And
yeah, I don't think it has either, or you wouldn't have gone on Tucker fucking Carlson's show.
What's going on? And I want to talk about the two other gentlemen that are going through this.
Oh, the other traitors who love and support Pete Hegseth, but don't want to go to war with Iran. And the cabal is trying to get Pete Hegseth to take us to war with Iran, even though Trump doesn't want to, but he will order Pete. And if there's someone around Pete that says no, he might turn on him, and they became jealous of their own. You mean those guys?
And what's going on with them in some ways is more infuriating because, as you said, I have a public profile. I took some what shouldn't be.
God, simmer down. You used to be on Fox a lot with Pete Hegseth.
Virtual positions, but are. And
yeah, like, oh my God, is that Dan Caldwell? Holy shit. Honey, get our picture. I've never had a picture with a traitor before. Why aren't you smiling? Jesus.
I was out there, advancing things that a lot of people in the foreign policy establishment didn't want. Doesn't justify what's happening to me, but that, let's just be honest, that is the nature of the games played in D.C. Darren Selnick and Colin Carroll are patriots. Let me talk about Darren a little bit. Darren's another person that worked with Secretary Hegseth for over a decade. He is somebody who's spent decades working around veterans and military health issues. He served in the first Bush administration at the VA. He served a critical role in the first Trump administration. He was a key player in advancing the VA Mission Act, one of the greatest accomplishments of the first Trump administration, which fundamentally reformed how the VA delivers healthcare. Darren, I think,
bullshit. By the way, this is him taking credit for VA choice under Trump. The Mission Act was the perfunctory moderation of the VA Choice Act that after the initial period went under review, added some stuff, and fuck off. They didn't dream this shit up. The Obama administration did this. Hal Rogers from the great state of Kentucky, a Republican, by the way, drafted that fucking bill in 2014. That's why it's the VA Choice Act of 2014. The Mission Act was a mild update.
bed every night saying he saved thousands of veterans' lives because of the reforms he helped advance. He's an Air Force veteran. In between his stints in government.
Well, hold on. All he had to do was not stop those advances. Those advances were happening anyways. I'm not even questioning that the dude fucking cares, but Jesus Christ.
Worked at Concerned Veterans for America with me and Pete, helping develop revolutionary reforms to the VA that in large part were implemented by the first Trump administration.
But yeah, not because of shit you guys did, but because of the VA Choice Act of 2014 signed into law by Barack Obama.
Come back, he picked up, left his nice life in Oceanside, California. His wife, stayed behind, and he got,
By the way, side note, at one point my car broke down when I was driving with my friend Matt to San Francisco from LA, and it broke down in Oceanside, and I had to stay the night waiting for my dad to wire me $200 for a part that they happened to have there, because the only thing in Oceanside was a military base, a motel, and a BMW repair shop. And my 320i that had 146,000 miles on it when I got it was approaching somewhere in the order of 200,000 miles. And it's no Toyota, I'll tell you that. And they luckily had, they were able to, order from a junkyard the part that I needed. Yeah, good times.
Apartment in Arlington, Virginia, and worked sometimes 16, 17-hour days to advance the secretary's agenda. He played a key role in ripping out woke and DEI nonsense from the administration. Darren was a key driver of that.
Yeah, I'm sure we all feel a lot safer that there aren't qualified brown people in roles that unqualified pasty incel assholes like yourself can fill.
And
it's so by your description of Darren he
yeah.
doesn't sound like he is engaged in the policy fights, or he's some crazy ideologue.
So before I talk about Colin, Colin has not transitioned as far as I know. But I don't actually know what Darren Selnick and Colin Carroll think about Iran.
Wait, you've discussed these policy positions. He talks about earlier how it's a great environment. They all work together and they would shoot ideas, and it was really a free, open space, and they could talk about stuff. And you really don't fucking know? You don't fucking know what these guys feel about this?
Selnick could be a secret 12er Shia for all I know. Colin Carroll could want to, nuke Iran until the sand glows. Darren was he was deputy chief of staff focused on back-end office operations and personnel and military health policy. Colin Carroll, let me talk about Colin because he's, I think, an incredible individual too. Colin was a Naval Academy graduate. He served as a recon Marine in combat. Then he literally became a rocket scientist, working in tech, working at companies like Anduril, and he was Steve Feinberg.
Anduril.
Chief of staff. Colin's focus was on science, R&E, and budget. He was down and in. And
so he had access to all the kind of things you would worry about, classified documents that would leak out, like like research and engineering inside the Pentagon on military devices and structures, the funding around them. So he would know, let's say for a company like Anduril, a defense contractor, where that money is going to be spent and when. So if he wanted to, say, boost his job bona fides with those guys, he would just leak some of that shit from his office. From a down and in shitty budgetary position, he had access to all the kind of information that all defense contractors want. Cool.
These gentlemen were patriots, and they...
What happened to them? Are they dead? They're not still patriots?
None of us deserve to get treated this way, but in some ways angers me more than what's going on with them.
And it's not even clear. I should just say at the outset that the Pentagon, DoD, is the largest human organization in the world. Has more people than any.
Correct.
I think in the history of the world. And there's a lot at stake.
Also, what? I mean, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, just body for body, is ginormous. The PLA is, by human standards, ginormous.
the future of the world.
Thanks, Groove Dragon, by the way, for getting the thumbs up. Everybody, give a thumbs up to the show. Wherever you're watching from, give me a thumbs up, even if it's just an emoji.
It's DOD, they have nuclear weapons. And so the pressure exerted on that agency from outside, but also the fighting within it, make it like one of the most complicated and treacherous work environments ever created. Is that fair?
Yeah. And that's why you wouldn't want a fucking drunk in charge. Maybe a dude who couldn't manage to not fuck around on 2 wives in a row shouldn't be running the most stressful, gigantic military organization the universe has ever seen by bipedal life forms.
That is fair. And I will say the one thing we had in common, there's a couple things we have in common, was we were threatening a lot of established interests in our own.
Oh, get the fuck out of here. Yeah. Everybody they were jealous. Shit. Oh, look at you guys. Thanks for the thumbs up. Look at that. The hell? What? Like this, I mean, this sounds very, like this is exactly what Tucker wants to hear. That's what this is. This is exactly what Tucker wants to hear.
Separate ways. And we had people who had personal vendettas against us.
Yes,
and sure. I think they weaponized.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That, of course, because you don't want to just randomly bomb Iran. So there are people in there with great power who want to randomly bomb Iran who haven't yet, even when you weren't there, but, you know, they just knew you were coming, so...
The investigation against us, I think that's part of what's going on here. But look, Colin, and let me just say, Steve Feinberg, I didn't know him before this. I have a lot of respect for him.
I do too.
I think he's going to be a fantastic deputy secretary. Steve Feinberg and Colin were going to shake up how acquisitions are done. How...
Yeah, apparently not anymore. Why is that? Is Steve... Maybe they were shaking it up too much because they were in bed with defense contractors, and what we're really talking about, the mishandling of classified documents, has nothing to do with shit leaked to a newspaper or to a fucking liberal reporter from NBC, but these assholes leaking classified material about military hardware to their buddies at competing defense contractors. Maybe that would be it.
The budgeting is done, how we do science and research. And Colin's got one speed, and that's go. And
yeah, that's terrible. I'm just saying. That's ridiculous. That means you would be completely inconsiderate of all other elements of the circumstance. You'd be all gas and no brakes, and that's a recipe for careening off a fucking cliff. You know who had one speed and was and it was go? Thelma and Louise.
He wasn't afraid to challenge people when they're acting stupid and wanted to keep doing the same thing. Darren's the same way.
Oh, so he called Hegseth stupid and got fired. I see. Okay, this is starting to make sense. Okay. I mean, I don't think he should have been fired for that. I think he probably should get a medal, but...
Upset a lot of the people that want to keep using the military to be a giant social science experiment.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's all these black people and women and stuff like that. He wanted to stop that, and he was alone in that because the president hadn't written a directive and the secretary wasn't all in on it. It's like, who's trying to... why would they... If you're trying to stop the anti-DEI shit that was going on, why would stopping that guy do it? Is that a threat to warn Hegseth and Trump?
And of course, I have some views about the role of America in the world that, as we've discussed, are a little controversial. All of us in our own ways threatened really established interests.
Your views are only controversial in Washington, D.C. Let me tell you that as a matter.
No, they aren't. No. I don't live in D.C., and I would debate you on all of it. I think you're full of shit. Like, he's an isolationist. That's controversial. That would cause, and again, debatable, arguable, controversial. It's like, always be on the side of the most aggressive white person is really what he's talking about. Always support the biggest, most violent move by the white person in the fight, no matter whether they're good or bad. And that includes Russia and Ukraine. That includes Wagner in Africa. That includes us in the, the Middle East should just be allowed to churn itself to paste, and then we'll move in and take stuff when they're too weak to do anything about it. That's what this guy is for. It's the idea that this guy has controversial viewpoints because he thinks we should be non-interventionist in battles that have nothing to do with us or something, which is what they sell all the time, is horseshit. That's the generalized thought. What he means is he wants to use that as a way to like spackle over the holes in his moral code.
Correct. They are not controversial anywhere else in this country or the world.
We threaten.
Also, by the way, like every thought will find controversy in the world. There's 8 fucking billion people, dum-dum. Sit down in Yemen, on the right longitude or the right latitude, and see if you won't get an argument across the table for America being involved or not involved. Or anybody being involved and not involved. Fucking hell.
Established interests inside the building and outside the building.
So I just want to restate, because this is the core, this is why you're here, because you got bounced out and you're being accused of betraying
by Pete Hegseth,
your boss, your president, your nation.
By Pete Hegseth. And Trump, by the way. Trump has called them disgruntled employees and leakers, just like Pete Hegseth has. We know their names, so it's not like they went under the radar and they're talking about somebody else. We know exactly who these fucking guys are, and Hegseth and Trump knows that we all know who these people are while they're talking about them.
You have, I don't want to speak for you, not leaked classified information to the news. You've never undergone a polygraph exam, and you've never handed over your personal phone. Are all those statements true?
That is all 100% correct. And let me just say, actually, my first instinct when they came and escorted me out of my office was I actually thought that they were going to try and get me to testify against the secretary, because the secretary over the whole signal.
Boy, that must have been a fucking surprise. How'd you take it when you found out that wasn't how it worked out? That's for real. Can you, take him at his word. Take him at his word. They were like, look, you guys aren't going to make me shit on Pete Hegseth. And you're like, shit on Pete Hegseth? He's the one who's having you fired, you dumbass. Like, what was it? My next question would be, what was the feeling that came when you thought that, of course, and then as soon as you found out that actually Pete Hegseth was like, dump that fucking guy, he's a traitorous asshole, and he's obviously the leaker, even though Hegseth was the guy, the only person we know of that has directly leaked attack plans. How'd you feel about that?
Stuff is under an inspector general investigation. That was my first instinct.
Well, and we now know, I think, based on what you've said before and what you're saying now, that your instincts in general are fucked. Yeah, you have terrible instincts. Your instincts will tell you that you should believe everything you hear and twice what you see.
This was part of it.
So there was an investigation into leaking. I think the president, like all presidents, doesn't want leaking. I mean, no,
of course not.
He wants leaking, right? If you're in charge, you don't want your employees to be leaking against you. So there was this leak investigation that was on,
or was there,
for weeks, right? What were you? Was your access to classified information limited during that time?
Not at all. In fact, the day I was escorted out of the building, I went into, I won't get specific, the highest,
a spiraling depression,
high-level intelligence briefings, and up until the minute I was pulled out of my office, I was on highly classified systems doing my work.
So you were looking at highly classified information.
Yes, he worked in the Pentagon at a high level, and then he was fired, and they walked him out of the building. Yes, the whole fucking place is classified. That's why Pete Hegseth's full of shit, dum-dum. Oh my God. That's exactly why Pete Hegseth is full of shit, because everything they talk about in there is highly classified. That's why the attack plans that he put in the fucking signal chat were highly classified. That's what makes them top secret. Of course, it's the fucking building. God damn.
Up until the moment they brought you outside.
Yeah, because it's the Pentagon. That's why he wasn't already outside looking at his regular work materials on a terminal with his back to the park. That's why it's a building. That's why it's the fucking Pentagon. That's why there are armed guards outside. Yes, everything that happens in there is classified. This is so bizarre. And the way he's talking about it has this, like, I mean, it's always, Tucker always has that fucking, forehead butt crease. Just asking questions, right? I can't, this is hard to understand. It's so infuriatingly stupid and everything. If you oversimplify everything, it certainly makes it easier to vilify anyone involved. If you just pretend you don't have, basic comprehension and that you're overwhelmed by a sense of violent naivete, God damn, like, yes, that's why they couldn't let him go back to his fucking desk. Oh God. It's amazing. Like, this gets better all the time. Holy shit.
And separated on the basis of the claim that you were leaking classified information.
I was doing my job. Part of my job entailed looking at intelligence, helping make recommendations to the secretary.
Yeah, right. So, yes, you wouldn't be investigated for or have any concern about you leaking classified information if you didn't have access to classified information in the first place. What? Okay.
Giving my thoughts, working with the policy team, and most of our work was done on classified systems.
The reason I'm pressing,
because you're in the Pentagon. Like, this is, yeah. Catfem, this hurts my very brain. I know. This is just getting dumber as it goes on.
that doesn't make any sense. So
None of this interview makes any sense. You're both so fucking, like, is there an epidural for reasoning? Like, when you sit down for an interview with Tucker Carlson, do these guys get like an injection in their asshole that shuts off their ability to just understand or comprehend normal reasoning and just fills them with like abject bigotry and paranoia?
Any sense to me.
right. So if you're, I mean, because just to be clear, you don't want people leaking classified information from the Pentagon.
Let me be clear. That is a problem at the Department of Defense. There has been things that have been shared with the
What?
media, particularly I would say
When?
the Panama stuff that is unacceptable. And
I've been the recipient of classified information for decades, including from the Pentagon, in the form of leak.
Yeah, but not classified, top secret. And again, the Department of State, the Secretary of State's travel calendar is technically classified. Simmer the fuck down, deep throat. I mean, don't get me wrong. Tucker would make a hilarious deep throat in the South Park version of All the Kings.
Deeper and longer.
Yeah.
I like wood.
You know what I mean? He'd be great.
Journalist who's doing his job has been. So, like, there's a lot of leaking of classified information, I can tell you.
but let's be honest. Everyone knows where
Why start now?
it's coming from. It's from the career staff who don't look like what the president and the secretary and vice president want to do.
They don't look like what the president and the secretary. I mean, he meant to say don't like what the president wants to do, but would that be true of both then? The career staff, the deep state.
There's people on the
You do realize you're fired for doing stuff you're accusing people who don't exist do.
staff that I come to respect, but a lot of them are incredibly hostile to the secretary, to the president, and the vice president's worldview. It's pretty obvious that that's where most of the leaks are coming from. There's a less obvious place. I just want to point something out.
The less obvious place. Where would that be? Oh, right. You. Yeah.
As we sit here today, Tucker, and this could change by the time this is aired, but as we sit here today, Susan Rice, Michelle Flournoy, Eric Edelman are still in good standing with the Department of Defense.
Right. And they haven't been perp walked out of the building because they haven't leaked anything.
That is correct. They are still,
Susan Rice? Like
Susan
the Obama
Rice,
Susan Rice?
Yes. Susan Rice is still on the Defense Policy Board.
Right now?
As we sit here today, by the time this is released, that might change.
Yeah, but that's not a fucking... They don't sit in the Pentagon and like the fucking judges on Krypton. She's on the board and they call them in if there's a particular thing that they dealt with during their time, they bring them in and go, hey, who are you talking with? What was this like? They always have those people so they can pull them back in. But they don't fucking sit at a round table like overruling what the president wants to do.
But as we sit here today, she's...
Oh, we hit over 1,000 likes on YouTube. Excellent. I bet we could get more. I bet you do know that helps us in the algorithm, right?
The Defense Policy Board. Now, that doesn't mean she can go in the building and get access to whatever she wants. But
well, then why should we give a fuck? It's an advisory board. So what you're saying is you brought her up for no fucking reason at all, and she can't leak anything because she's not in there and getting access to stuff. And the stuff that you're talking about that was leaked only happened while you were there, and she was never anywhere near the building when they were talking about it, so she wouldn't have had the access to it or known about it when it was leaked in the first place. So why are you bringing her up other than to cover your ass and she's brown?
That she works with DoD employees, she can interact with them, and has the credential and the affiliation with the Department of Defense.
But so Susan Rice has no relevant experience for a job like that at all. She's a political hack.
Correct.
Yet she held that position and has relevant knowledge about it because of her experience there.
As we sit here in April of 2025, about 100 days into the president's first term, she and a bunch of other people who are incredibly hostile to the president and his worldview remain on the Defense Policy Board.
You're sure?
You can go on the website and check it.
Right, but the Defense Policy Board that doesn't have anything to do with whether or not we go to war someplace unless he wants their advice. What are you talking about? Who cares?
No. And I checked with Colin and Darren, and they confirmed that as well too.
Sorry, you checked the website and her name is on there, and you checked with the other two guys that were fired, and they're like, "Yep, she totally is." And
well, that's shocking.
It is. It's very shocking. I'm shocked. I feel shocked.
And again, I would just say, if you want to look where leaks are maybe coming from, that would be a place to start.
And so you think Pete Hegseth preferred to keep Susan Rice on that board rather than fire you for a trumped up car? Like,
so, but just back to your story, and I won't linger on it. Every time I mention this, your jaw tightens. I can feel your frustration. And I should just say point blank.
Frustrated you.
Well, I'm completely convinced that this is nonsense and sinister nonsense.
I agree. I think Sinister, I said this before, but I think Sinister Nonsense is a great book title when talking about Pete Hegseth's time at the Pentagon.
But if you were the subject of an investigation, a leak investigation, if the investigators had determined that you were leaking classified information to the news media, you probably wouldn't have continued to receive access to classified information, correct?
Correct.
Right. That's why they walked him out of the building. Yes. That's why he was not allowed to go back to his desk where the classified information was. That's exactly what that says. That's exactly what I mean.
I probably would be sitting here today.
You'd be in jail, dude. You would have been handcuffed, correct?
If I had leaked, well, again, I just want to be clear here. I still don't know if the term they used is, and they.
He's about to tell you that he knew this whole time what he's being investigated for and that the investigation is ongoing. What do you think? What do you think he's about to say? Like mishandling of classified documents or unauthorized handling? What do you think? He's about to admit that he's known this whole time, and when he said earlier he doesn't even know what he's being investigated for and whether it's ongoing, he's about to lie again. He's about to tell you that earlier shit was a lie.
See the DoD using is unauthorized release of information.
Fuck you. Unauthorized release of information, which is also a lie because it's unauthorized handling of classified information. Unauthorized release of information? I'm sorry. If you give somebody directions while they're on the corner and you work for the Pentagon, you have to get authorization to release that information? You drop the word classified on purpose.
If I think there's a lot of rumors and people are exploiting this that we can talk about. If I actually did some of the things that anonymous people on the internet and in the Pentagon are saying I did.
Anonymous people on the internet and at the Pentagon are saying, okay, I don't care about them. And maybe there are anonymous people. Maybe there are anonymous people on the internet that are saying all kinds of terrible shit about you. I'm just going to go with what the Secretary of Defense and the President have said about you. How about that? Unless you just want to back the fuck up and explain to me what kind of liars they are.
I'd be in handcuffs.
And you're not.
I'm not.
Yep.
I'd be like Reality Winner or Bradley Manning or Edward.
Oh, fuck you. Notice how he's calling Chelsea Manning Bradley. Again, that should explain to you who this asshole is.
Or one of those people.
It's very obvious to me, having far fewer details than you have.
That's not. I don't even think that's possible. I think there is a bottom on ignorance.
One of the people who is perceived to be standing in the way of
somebody. By the way, somebody just called him transphobic. He's not transphobic. He's a bigot. He doesn't have an abject psychological disorder that makes him irrationally afraid of trans people. He's a bigot. He's not transphobic. Stop giving them an out. It drives me fucking crazy. I know, that's a normalization phrase. It's not a phobia. He's hateful and he's a prick. He doesn't have an illness. He's a bigot. And I know you didn't mean anything by that, but you know how I feel about this. We have to reassert that these people don't. I'm not going to be ableist by bagging on somebody who has arachnophobia or a fear of heights. He's a bigot.
Change war in Iran, and that was kind of your crime. That seems obvious.
It's gibberish, bullshit. Why the fuck would Dan Caldwell, of all people, his opinion on whether we should attack Iran or not be worth the scandal of kicking him to the fucking curb? Was he going to stop Pete Hegseth from carrying out Trump's orders if Trump decided to do it? Was he on the team with Pete Hegseth? You don't think the other people around him are anti-abstract attack on Iran? What are you talking about? Where? I don't get it. I don't know why Dan Caldwell fucking matters in the decision circle. He's not one of the joint goddamn chiefs. He's a rando in the fucking office. He looked at classified information all the time by his own admission, and he gave advice amongst a bunch of other people. And his advice was, we shouldn't bomb Iran. And apparently, in Hegseth's Pentagon and in Trump's Pentagon, that's enough to get you fired. How does any of this make sense? This whole, this bullshit self-evident storyline that Tucker keeps throwing out, it's obvious that, you were dangerous. He's not a fucking hypnotist. If he was right about it, other people will be right about it. And Pete Hegseth would talk to him on the fucking phone once he got kicked out and still not do it. It's bullshit. If Trump attacks Iran, or Pete Hegseth orders an attack on Iran, or orders support for Israel attacking Iran, it will be because he's following the orders of Trump who said it. Dan Caldwell didn't get a chance to talk Trump out of shit because he was in contact with Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth didn't go to Dan Caldwell for his final answer on whether they should attack something. Yeah, he's totally Carter Page. It's just like a self-involved, narcissistic, incel dickhead who was a bro hire of Pete Hegseth's and was expected to take one for the team because Pete Hegseth is a fuck up and Trump doesn't want to fire him, so they got to fire other people close by. It's so weird.
I think it's complicated. There's other layers to this, but based on what has been happening since then, I think that is a factor. Is that
Jesus. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Nobody is saying we got to get rid of this Caldwell guy. He's whispering in Pete Hegseth's ear. He's never going to let us carry out a global attack that we've been planning for decades on Iran, but magically haven't done yet. What the... like the ego involved in this is extraordinary. And you're talking to... You're listening to somebody who has trust me, an enormous ego. And you have to be a stand-up. You just have to. And so this, like petty narcissism from guys like this is... It's just disappointing from an ego standpoint.
and it is being weaponized against me, is I think that they want to also go after, and I think that I can't say this with certainty, but just speculating.
Mm-hmm. You're bullshitting. Just say bullshitting.
Had somebody in the White House not said, okay, we need to put a stop to this, there probably been more people treated the same way that Colin, Darren Selnick, and myself were treated.
So the fact...
Sorry. So Trump decided enough scapegoats who had nothing to do with it have been fired. So some magical unknown career politician or deep state operative decided to whisper in Trump's ear and go, "Enough, sir. Let the rest of them live for the time being. You will enact your wrath upon them later."
This way to knock someone out of commission and eliminate his influence, and in your case his job, is to tell the person that he works for that person's betraying you.
Yes. And if that person that they're telling, like Pete Hegseth, is a dipshit with no loyalty whatsoever, he'll just drop you in a week because of some of his own fuck-ups? Who is this person? Who is this fucking Hegseth whisperer?
Person's betraying you.
And Pete Hegseth goes, "Oh no. We should probably get rid of, no, I don't like him anymore. I want to get rid of him. Get rid of him. That's all it takes. That's all it fucking takes. Again, yet another reason why Pete Hegseth shouldn't be in charge of fucking anything. If he's that fucking dough-headed, that's all it fucking took? These guys are, by Tucker's own admission, completely innocent and totally in line with the president's strategies or his doctrine. And yet also, those are the betrayers, sir. Oh no. I'm going to go tell Trump, these guys, I thought they were my friends. What the hell? Yeah, again, Pete Hegseth is terrible at this. He's a sap. He's a dough-headed dipshit. If he can turn on his friends that quickly, why would you trust him to stay a patriot? That's all it took? A fucking week of bad press, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you know what? Broom, those guys I've been friends with for a fucking decade. You know, the guys that made sure that the vets were treated nicely, and I was very proud to steal money from their organization. Fuck them first." Oh, Jesus.
I mean, it sounds to me, again, I'm keep putting words in your mouth, but it sounds to me like you have felt, it sounds like you still feel that your views are aligned with those of the president.
100%. I wouldn't have joined this administration if I didn't feel that way.
Well, sure you would. I mean, if you were a mole or you were subversive or you were trying to undermine what the president wanted to do, whether it was what he was saying publicly or not, of course. Can we not just be we don't have to be naive and stupid about this. If you wanted to be a spy, you would say what you're saying. We don't have to pretend that that doesn't exist. You could be full of shit. You would, of course you would join this if you wanted to, I don't know, attack from within, right? That's a possibility. And if you don't think it's a possibility, the fuck are you doing advising on war plans if you can't understand that there can be an attack from within?
I don't speak for the president, but here's the other thing too. I had this attitude in the Pentagon, and maybe this was, I still had this attitude that I was still, in the Marine Corps. It's like, hey, when a decision is made, when we've decided on a course of action that we're going to do this, we're going to make sure it's executed properly.
Yes.
And you still.
Yes, we are. We're gonna make sure that if we want an all wood building with wooden shelves and wooden books and a wooden frame.
I like wood.
We're going to put wood everywhere that we can fit it. Really.
Deeper and longer.
We're just going to as much wood as we can. Sure. And then, yes. And then we'll do that. Yeah. And of course you would. Of course you would.
Concerns, if you see something happening, then you can do that. But if you are so repulsed by what's happening, then you should resign.
So I think what you're saying is that you...
Oh, you mean like Olyat did? So what you're saying is Olyat, his quitting and doing the op-ed in Politico was the right way to go.
You were serving your bosses, even when you personally disagreed.
Correct.
As you did in the U.S. Marine Corps.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's in an advisory position. He doesn't carry out stuff. So how do you follow orders as an advisor other than find me a attack plan that will kill these people? I don't think we should kill those people. All right, well, find me an attack plan that kills them anyways. Well, that's not my job. I'm to advise you that I don't think it's a good idea. You talk to those guys over there with the fucking brass on their chest, and they'll tell you how to do it.
I don't even want to ask you, but I'm going to. How does this make you you must feel like you're living...
Oh my God, you must feel like you like wood.
I like wood.
You got to feel it like you walk into your home every day, and like, how do you react to any of these things? You're looking in the mirror and you're like,
oh, hello there.
A nightmare.
Yeah, it is a nightmare. It's a nightmare. And I feel so hurt. I feel so hurt. I don't know. I was trying to pee with my friend.
I said earlier, sometimes I feel like it hasn't fully set in because it does feel like a dream. It's like, what am I?
Or you're a sociopath and you were hired to be a sociopath, and that's why.
Wake up at 04:30 and just get ready for work and, walk my dog, drop her off at doggy daycare, and then roll into the river entrance back in the Pentagon.
Yeah, it's what I call the macho mornings. Get up, walk my dog. So the kids live with your wife, your ex-wife then. So you don't get up and feed your kids and send them off to school and then go. It's just you walk your dog. You have children. Where are they in this? What happened to them? I'm sorry. I mean, look, the relationships break up and that's fine or whatever. Maybe they do go, but I don't know, some kind of contact. I don't know. It seems a bit, didn't bring that up.
I feel like on some level that's happening and it, I feel like it hasn't fully hit me, but it's been awful. I mean, the impact on my family, I'll just say
my dog, the people at doggy daycare.
I wanted to try and hide this from my mom as long as possible.
Because I live with her and she's always going, what's all that noise in the basement? You don't have those fellas over drinking again. Why is Pete Hegseth passed out on my couch again? It's been embarrassing.
was worried. She's a worrier. I love her to death. She's a saint. I didn't want.
She let me move in after, you know, the recent uncomfortableness with my wife and the other person at work I won't bring up.
Her. Then an hour later, somebody leaked to Reuters describing exactly what had happened to me. And then 6 hours later, they pulled the same stunt with Darren, and then 12 hours later, they pulled the same stunt with Colin.
So they told the truth. And what was the most upsetting? That your mother was more upset about what happened to them and that she hoped you'd get a real job, or?
And so, you know, it's been devastating and it's caused a lot of stress to my family. Just one thing I want to say is...
And your dog, don't forget. I mean, because it's very confused why you don't drop it off at doggy daycare anymore and you're just kind of hanging around.
I've been a friend and supporter of Pete Hegseth for a long time, and I'm just personally devastated by this. It's just awful and whatnot.
Well, it's got to be, you know, hey, I've been there. I've been through betrayal. Somebody you thought was a friend turned out to be a raging piece of shit, and you bent over backwards. You tried to help them everywhere you could, and they left you hanging. It's a rough one. It's a rough one to go through. I suppose it's even worse when they mock you on the lawn of the White House during an Easter egg hunt.
And but at the end of the day,
you have evening. It's true. I mean, I feel like it's a broken clock moment he's having. At the end of the day, there comes evening.
Putting all this aside, Pete Hegseth needs to be a successful Secretary of Defense. And the entire Department of Defense...
maybe he needs to successfully quit.
Cannot continue to be consumed by chaos. They have a great team there. They have...
Do they, though? No. I'm gonna call bullshit on that as well. Yeah, no. I don't buy it.
Great Deputy Secretary. We just talked about Steve Feinberg. They have I think, one of the leading lights of the America First foreign policy movement in Bridge Colby, a dear friend of mine, running the policy shop now, effectively the Pentagon's number 3. He has a lot of great mid-level and junior staffers under him.
Yeah, and they're all going to get blamed for this shit, and Pete Hegseth will stay on board because he doesn't give a fuck about you, and he doesn't give a fuck about them, and it's all about the Trump show, and Pete Hegseth sees himself as joined inexorably to Trump at the hip. So you guys will be the scapegoats. You will be tossed overboard. You'll be thrown in front of the bus.
You're going to have some great undersecretaries coming in. These are just world-class people. These are not political hacks. You know, people like Mike Duffy at A&S, people like Emil Michaels and A&S's acquisition and sustainment at research and engineering. Service secretaries, I think, are going to be great. Dan Driscoll, even though he has a secondary job running an agency that shouldn't exist, ATF, I think.
An agency that shouldn't exist. That's right, because he'll never... Dan Caldwell will never forgive them for figuring out who did the Oklahoma City bombing.
He's proven to be a great Army secretary. And look, one of my favorite things, Tucker, is admitting you're wrong about people.
Like Pete Hegseth, like he's a piece of shit. You're finally going to say it. Say it. Say it. Pete Hegseth sucks.
One person I was wrong about was John Phelan. I was skeptical of him being Navy secretary. And so far, I have to say, him and his team are off to a great start.
Well, he hasn't... drummed anybody out of his he hasn't leaked naval positions to anybody or attack plans on an app.
I think Troy Mink is going to be a fantastic Air Force secretary, and so there's this fantastic team underneath the secretary that can enable him to be incredibly successful.
Why? Fish stinks from the head.
He has to move past this. He has to get a solid team around him in the front office. And this isn't a plea.
Sorry, you weren't a part of a solid team?
Hire me back. I candidly just want to move on and go back to doing what I was doing before and being an advocate on the outside. But without Darren and I and others, he needs to get a strong team in there. And there's some great people that I think could do that.
And the chairman of the Joint Chiefs?
Oh, I have to say, this is interesting you bring him up. Chairman Dan Raisin Kane, incredibly impressive. And I actually think, if I'm being honest, one thing that has incited the building against President Trump and the secretary was the selection of him. A lot of people wanted the secretary and the president to go the normal route, including some people in the administration, and pick a combatant commander, a General Kurilla.
Oh, by the way, one of the things that this guy does all the time, and Tucker does it as well, but it's particularly galling, he does it over and over, is that he assigns a thought process to a bunch of other people that there's this vast conspiracy or people act a certain way. He's like his belief that Democrats desperately want to bomb Iran, that we're hawkish on Iran, and that everybody across the board, it's one thing that it's kind of bipartisan wanting to bomb Iran, but the Democrats really want to do it. And his reason for believing that is that he must have been kicked to the curb by a Democratic bureaucrat, operative, deep state, somebody, and he couldn't have possibly been fired by Hegseth. So it has to be about his Iran views. So it has to be a secret Democrat who really wants to destroy Iran on behalf of Israel or in conjunction with Israel. And that's why he lost his job. And so he projects this bizarre depth of they all want this or they all think this, which again is a level of paranoia you don't want anywhere near an advisory council to the Secretary of Defense. There's a lot of reasons to kick this asshole to the curb. That would be the biggest one, besides the fact that he's either on purpose or accidentally leaking information to the press.
Or an Admiral Paparo. I actually like Admiral Paparo, but they want him to go that route. No, instead, they did something that needed to happen, is they pulled a very accomplished guy out of retirement, somebody who didn't do all the right things and check all the right boxes in his career, but who's incredibly smart, who's incredibly thoughtful about how he approaches problems to be the chairman. And that upset so many career paths. If you look at these books where they kind of lay out how you promote generals, is they have little maps about where people are going to go. And there's a lot of people that are going to go to this role in the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the vice chairman. They're going to be the chief of staff of the Army. And by elevating Kane, they upset so many career paths. And it's hard to overstate how much of a middle finger that was to a lot of the uniform leadership of the United States military.
Yeah, I don't think it had anything to do with Raisin Kane being the dude, because Trump picked him as a namesake. And if your career path has more than a 3-year elbow in it, I think you're going to be just fucking fine. But it wouldn't be enough. The idea, because you have to, let's finish on this, to buy into what Dan Caldwell is saying, who, for the record, is a dipshit. And only outpaced in his dipshittery in that interview by Tucker Carlson himself. But understand the premise of what he's putting forward. And this is something you'll hear from Pete Hegseth and others as well. That generals, military people who have spent their entire lives in service of the country will jockey around in such a way to try and get us into a devastating war in the Middle East with Iran that they know we shouldn't fight, but they want us to do it because they're mad that someone else got a promotion that they didn't get. Just understand what kind of projection you would have to be, the idea, the things you'd have to believe for that to work. Know how promoting outside the order is bad. I agree. That it's not the problem. What I'm saying is what they actually did, or him putting somebody inside there, good or bad, is immaterial. What we're looking at is Dan Caldwell and the people around Pete Hegseth and this and what they believe about other people because of their behavior. Because even he said in that interview, it was an act of petty jealousies were what spurred this on. amongst, Hegseth's staff and Joe Casper and all that kind of stuff. Like, you'd have to be so pathetic to fight your whole life to be in that position. I want to be chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And if I can't get it, I will drag America into Iraq and Afghanistan on steroids. It's moronic. It makes zero sense.